All right, if it is Monday morning after a Browns game, it's after further review. Welcome aboard, everyone. I'm Dave DeNatale. Good to have you with us. The Cleveland Browns beat the Cincinnati Bengals 27-19 at First Energy Stadium on Sunday. And as we kick it off, we always do to talk about it, the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, joining me. Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning, Gino.
Well, I thought you put it in real proper perspective after the game. It wasn't pretty, but when you're the Browns and you've been struggling at times to find wins, you can't get picky. You got to take them.
Yeah, you do. You really do. It was a strange game. It had a funny rhythm to it, or it had a lack of rhythm to it. And it was a struggle. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the game was kind of hanging around, and Cincinnati just seemed like they had the football all game long and all afternoon long, as opposed to what the Browns did offensively. Just didn't seem like the Browns offense was on the field a long time. And I would say the Browns defense played a textbook bend but do not break type of defense all afternoon. And I think, Cincinnati's inside the 10 a number of times. I mean, they were in the red zone a number of times and only came away with the one touchdown, settled for some field goals, and came up dry a couple of times. So I think that you take the win any way you can get them, as we know. I mean, you just don't have to check with any other fan base or organization throughout the NFL. We know how difficult it is to win here in the NFL week in and week out. And some weeks you score a ton of points, and some weeks you just score enough. And I think yesterday we just scored enough and played well enough to win the football game against a team that I give them a lot of credit. At 1-11, I thought Cincinnati came in and played very hard all game long.
You know, and it was in the first quarter, I sat and looked at the stats and said, wait a minute. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt have each carried the football one time in the quarter. That just blows my mind, considering the way the Steelers in the second half last week that unfolded. It's like, wait a minute, didn't the Browns learn anything? Well, at least at halftime, I guess they learned it, because Nick Chubb became the focal point in the second half and the offense started to move.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I agree with you, and I think that was the matchup going into the game that was the obvious one, that the Bengals were very, very weak against the run defensively. They gave up a ton of yardage, and that was the path, I think, to victory. If you go in a pregame situation, you take a look at, okay, what's the obvious thing? The obvious thing is they can't stop the run, and we have two of the best runners and the best runner in the NFL this year in our backfield. So let's go. I mean, let's just take the point of least resistance. But I will say this. When you have a play defensively or on special teams that ends up scoring for you, you really end up losing an offensive possession. So yesterday, Denzel Ward comes up with that pick six and takes it 61 yards for a touchdown, and you lose a possession. That's when I think the Browns offense kind of got out of sync, because they were over on the sideline for it seemed like about 35, 40 minutes of actual time. And I think that used to happen when Josh Krebs used to take those kick returns back. The offense would lose a possession, and sometimes it would take them a little bit to find their rhythm once again. And I think that's what happened. Now, it's no excuse for the play calling. There's no doubt about that. But I do believe that they really didn't have the football a lot in the first half. I think there was almost a 10.5-minute difference in time of possession by halftime between the Browns and the Bengals, with the Bengals having the football a lot more. And even when the Bengals got the football, Dino, they had long drives.
Yes.
I mean, they had over 7 minutes, and sometimes they would only settle for a field goal, or the Browns would stop them, and they got the one touchdown when Joe Mixon took one in. But other than that, I mean, they kind of just meandered their way up the field, and then the Browns would finally defensively stop them when they would get inside the 10-yard line. So I think that was the problem in the first half. But the second half, it started with a bang, because the Browns got the ball at the start of the second half, and they went 5 plays, I think, down the field, and all of the plays were running plays, and they ended up scoring the touchdown. So that was a little bit more like it, and I think when they needed it, and when they needed it at that point, when they got the ball after the goal line stand at the 2-yard line, they got a great run from Kareem Hunt. It was good to see. It really was. I mean, it took a while to get it going, but I'm glad that they, were patient enough to stay with it and realize it's there if we just dial it up and keep dialing up, because I think too many times they've become impatient.
Yes.
But there still were points in the game yesterday, Gino, where they were, flinging it around. They were, throwing it around the ball yard, as we say, and it was in dangerous positions. And if that last interception had not been overruled, if the Bengals, if that had stood and they got the ball at the 16-yard line, man, I'll tell you what, that would have been a different story, I think.
Yeah, it would have been a heck of a lot tighter. Were you surprised that? And I realize the Bengals are 1-11 at the time, and they've got nothing to lose. But one of the times when they were down in the red zone and they passed up on kicking the field goal and went for it on 4th down, I was kind of surprised that they took that path and left points on the field.
Well, the only thing I think was I think there were a little bit maybe under 6 minutes maybe left to go in the game at that point in time. I think they were worried that the Browns were going to get the ball back if they kicked the field goal, and I assume Randy Bullock would have made it because he was having a very effective afternoon kicking the ball for the Bengals. So I think that they were worried, are we going to get the ball back? And I think that's because, the Browns started to run the ball effectively. I mean, Chubb had that big run of 57 yards that got them down to the 3-yard line. Kareem Hunt was starting to find his way. So I think there was a concern, are we going to get down here again? Are we going to get down here again? And even bigger, are we going to get the ball again? That's the only reason I think that maybe they decided to do it at that point in time.
Jim Donovan's our guest on After Further Review on this Monday morning. What's a Browns win without some kind of controversy to talk about? And there are kind of two separate threads here that involve Odell Beckham. Let's do the injury thing first. We found out before the game that Beckham apparently has been dealing with a sports hernia, and then it was brought up after the game. Baker Mayfield, as he said later, he didn't mean to throw the Browns medical staff under the bus, but he kind of did. And it's what people are kind of talking about this morning. It's like, oh, Baker, we can't believe that you would say these things. And it's another distraction, another drama point on this football team.
Yeah, it really is. The Browns make more news in the post-game locker room than they do in what they do on the field during the game. So for another scenario, we fall into a situation where they win a game, but we're not talking about the game, and we're certainly not celebrating the game. So we beat Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, and everybody's talking about Myles Garrett and that awful brawl that happened at the end of the game and what eventually happened to him with the suspension, indefinite suspension. Now they beat the Bengals, and we're talking about, OBJ, a number of things. Is he happy here? Is the offense dysfunctional? Is he a victim of the dysfunction? Are there too many cooks in the proverbial kitchen of the Browns offense? Then that expands to he is injured. He's been injured all season long. He may need surgery. Maybe he should have had the surgery at the beginning of the year and only missed 1 or 2 games. As far as the Mayfield part of this, I think, Dino, there are a couple of commandments in the NFL or anywhere else, but definitely in the NFL. You don't do that to your training staff, and you don't fool around with the training staff, and you don't fool around with the equipment guys.
Yes.
And I'm not saying he fooled around with the equipment guys, but he did the training staff because those guys really work their tails off. I mean, they work hours that we don't even know about to get players ready, to take care of them, to make sure they're comfortable, they're fit, they're pain-free. That was not a good look. That happened yesterday. But when you broaden that out and you take a step back, I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous that we're talking about all of this stuff instead of saying, all right, they won their 4th straight game at home. They're still kind of mathematically in the playoff chase, and they've got 3 games to play. And we're not talking about anything like that. We have the leading rusher in the NFL who gave them another great game yesterday, or at least was allowed to give them a great half in the game yesterday.
Yes.
And we're talking about all of this other stuff. And that is going to be part of the decision at the end of the year when they widen this whole thing out and take a look at everything that went on and say, did this work? And I don't know that it did. I really don't know that it did. I don't think it has so far.
No. It's and you take the Beckham injury and the Mayfield response on one hand, and then we also found out, as you said, kind of Beckham apparently is telling players around the league, or at least a player or more, hey, come get me in the off season. He didn't want to talk about it after the game. Jarvis Landry didn't want to talk about it after the game. But Baker says it's just drama. But I think it's synonymous with what's happened this year.
Yeah, this has been a season-long mission in taking him and getting him and putting him and inserting him on your football team. Can we get him to OTAs? Oh, thank God we got him to one OTA.
Yes.
When we get him to the minicamp, is he going to do anything? Well, not really. In team sessions, he'll do everything in an individual aspect. Okay, well, certainly when he gets to training camp, it will be a full go. Well, it really wasn't a full go. Is he going to play in any preseason games? No, he's not going to play in any preseason games. He will start the regular season. And as the season has gone on, I mean, let's face it, whether it's him, the injury, the offense, his lack of being comfortable here in Cleveland, he's having his worst year ever in the NFL. I mean, we are really deliberating and wringing our hands over a guy that's given us 2 or 3 catches a game. And we expected 10 catches a game, 2 touchdowns a game.
Right.
Was really what everybody was saying. And I know that's Christmas morning that we're all coming down and looking under the tree and saying, oh boy, OBJ is here and he's going to give us an unbelievable season. This is his worst season in the NFL. In fact, if you take a look at it, he really hasn't had a really effective season in the last 3 seasons of his career. And I realize he was injured in New York at one point in time. But if it's all about the numbers, his numbers are great 3 years ago.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, if let's just say if the Browns felt compelled in the offseason to say, okay, it didn't work, let's just cut our losses. I don't know if they could get what they had to give up for him, a first-round pick for Beckham now, given how you just kind of laid out. It's not just been 1 year, but because of the injuries, it's been a pattern of a couple of years where the performance has not been what one would expect out of one of the top receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. And this line of stories that have been coming out lately, the NFL knows all about these, the NFL community, because these are the kind of stories that came out in New York week to week when he was with the Giants, and definitely in the last couple of years when he was with the Giants. And they were, that was turbulent over there. And now these stories have a different tinge to them. We're not having the sideline scenes that happened, at Giant Stadium. Instead, this is more of a passive-aggressive type of situation. But you wonder if they're a little bit strategic, that he knows the way to get out of a situation. He's such a big-name player, and he grabs headlines with everything he does. I mean, people just gravitate towards him because he is such a unique personality. And, I have to be honest with you, when he talks in the locker room, he is infectious.
Yes.
He really is. He's really fun to listen to. If it is orchestrated, man, I'll tell you what, he should be on WVIZ for one of the great performances, and I'll call in and donate and become a VIZ member. But anyway, I really believe that when these kind of stories are coming out and this storyline is being followed, this hurts the Browns if they were considering to try and trade him, because it dampens the market for him. It weakens it for him because, there's a lot of teams that are saying, well, listen, he doesn't want to be there in the first place, so why would we give them a first-round pick? And the other thing, other teams are probably saying, I don't know, do we want to bring that into our locker room? I mean, is it worth it? After all, there is kind of a regression in the way he's played statistically and even to the eye when you watch him out on the field. This is not the guy that exploded up and down the sidelines when he was with the Giants.
And lastly, Jimmy, as the Browns now 3 games to go, they'll have a kind of a we've had a bunch of division games here with the Bengals and Steelers, and the Browns will finish up with the Ravens and Bengals. So you kind of have this quirk week here with a trip to Arizona. But I'm excited to see what they do against Murray. I think that'll be fun. But this is, if the Browns want to be above 500 and still keep their playoff hopes alive, they can't stub their toes.
No, they can't, and they played the Steelers very, very hard yesterday, very tough. I know that they ended up losing the game. Kyler Murray is an interesting guy. There'll be a great deal of attention given to the game because of the Oklahoma Sooner factor, that you have the 2 guys that have won the Heisman Trophy both as Oklahoma quarterbacks. Very different in style, obviously. Murray plays, kind of a Lamar Jackson type style, although he's a lot smaller than Lamar Jackson, but he plays that way. Mayfield plays differently, I know Baker is uber competitive and definitely wants to come out on top of this situation. I think the Browns defense will be very, very taxed in this game. I really do, especially that front, because you can really get worn out trying to chase him around, even on plays, not necessarily that he's going to take off and run. I mean, he'll do that, but he also runs around a lot in the pocket to create a throwing lane. After all, he's short. I mean, he's not a very tall quarterback. And I have to tell you, Dino, the state of that defensive line right now is young, and they're really kind of feeling their way. I mean, you're not dealing with Olivier Vernon and Myles Garrett and players like that. You're dealing with Brian Cox Jr. and a Leon Koo and Brandon Bryant and Preston Gustin. I mean, it's unbelievable how, diluted the Browns' defensive line has become here because of various situations, injury and suspension. And so that's going to be really a taxing situation for them. They better get their rest this week as they get ready to go out there and chase him around and hopefully keep him corralled and then take care of the play on the other end.
Indeed. All right, Jimmy, we'll look forward to seeing you later on tonight. What matters most at 6, and then the front row at 7 with the rest of the panel.
All right, thanks, Dino.
All right, thank you. Jim Donovan is our guest, joining us this morning, the voice of the Browns, coming off of that 27-19 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. But, as we said, it's almost deflating at times because, you want to talk about the Browns win and they're 6-7, and if they would keep going here, they can be potentially above 500. Whether they make the playoffs or not, it's slim, but it's still mathematically possible. But the fact that they won another game at home, they won another game in the division, those are things you have to do if you want to become a winning, successful team. Well, they did that, but we can't talk about that because we have to talk about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room yesterday was the fact that, we have Beckham injury and you have Beckham wants out, apparently. So that's what we're reduced to kind of talking about and taking away from that game. So that's unfortunate, but that's kind of typified. I know Bud Shaw wrote about this morning. I mean, people are going to remember 2019 as a year of Browns drama instead of what happens on the field. And that's, you never want that. I mean, if you're talking about distractions, you're not talking about success. And that's, ultimately the problem. We'll get Matt Florjancic up here in just a moment. We do have a Twitter poll question for you to vote on today. It's simple. Who gets your game ball after the win over the Bengals on Sunday? Gave you 4 options. You could, we could have written in more, but we only get 4. Your options are Denzel Ward, that's a good Hunt, and so far, the vote pretty staggering for Nick Chubb, as one might expect, 71%. Ward got 17%, Landry at 7%, Hunt at 5%. Just a couple of responses. Let's see. Ron Davis says, Ward, seriously? Nice interception. The kid has super speed and 0 ball skills. Well, here's the thing, though, Ron. I got to give the guy props. You get the pick 6, you get the pick 6. The Browns needed points, they got points. I'm not going to deviate from him because of that. 1-1 before I die. That's a good Twitter handle. Nobody. Game ball should go to any of the fans that paid and stayed to watch that garbage. Ice says Nick, obviously. Kareem is second. And Chris Ratliff says the answer is always Jim Donovan's adopted son, Nick Chubb. All right, Matt Florjancic is here, 3 News digital sports reporter. He was at the game yesterday, and so that meant being at First Energy Stadium, you saw the game, but you also had to deal with high drama beforehand and high drama afterhand, which is, of course, the trademark of this team this year. And really, let's be honest, of the trademark of 20 years. But
right,
this year in
exactly.
general.
This is about as interesting as it's gotten. We've had drama for other reasons, but this year's team seems to be setting a new standard. And they don't seem to be upset about it either.
No, they've been almost like they're unapologetic about it.
Exactly. Odell and Jarvis didn't want to talk about the reports of Odell wanting out. Baker not only threw under the bus the medical staff, but then he threw it in reverse and back over them before he retracted his statements. But at that point, as to use another metaphor from another former Browns quarterback, Colt McCoy, the hay was in the barn at that point.
Yes.
So it was out there, and I think it will probably be a key topic of Freddie Kitchens' press conference today.
I would think so. Is he doing a conference call or a press conference?
No, he's doing a full press conference, yeah. It was just a weird afternoon because these victories are so rare, or have been over the years for the Browns, and we want to enjoy them. We want to celebrate when our team does well. Even if they don't play perfectly, they still get a win. We want to enjoy it. That was about, other than the Pittsburgh game with the Myles Garrett debacle, I can't remember a victory that felt more like a loss.
Right.
It really, it takes all the fun out of it.
There was no joy. There was very little joy in Mudville after that one because
Mighty Casey wants to leave town.
That's it. That's it. And let's hit that first. We'll get back to the injury thing in a second. But Mighty Casey wants to pack up and leave. Apparently, Jay Glazer came out yesterday with the report, and you sit there and you go, and Jimmy just pointed this out. Hey, look, this is. If you covered the Giants, this was almost like a weekly thing going on there, and now it's spread here. The problem is Odell's body of work, in addition to the injuries and everything. I don't know if you are going to trade him in the offseason. If you do entertain doing that, you're not going to get dollar for dollar what you gave up for him last year.
No question. The injury questions are starting to creep up more and more with Odell and whether or not he can stay healthy or if he's the dreaded label of injury prone. And his productivity has suffered as of late because of his issues with injury. But there are a lot of other factors that would dumb down his trade value, if you will. And I think yesterday's report is the key example of that. When it's out there that a player wants out, your asking price for him can't be through the roof.
Correct.
And I would think that the Browns could get a high draft pick for him, but if they want multiple picks, they're going to have to accept no higher than a second rounder.
Correct.
And you can maybe flirt with getting a fourth or fifth, but it may be a situation where somebody's willing to take a chance on him for a first round pick, but that's the only thing you're getting in return for Beckham, and that's way under the market value of what you paid, which was a couple draft picks, including last year's first, and a starting safety, who himself was a first-round pick. So you essentially give up 2 firsts and a later-round pick for Odell, and you can expect quite a bit less in return. Reports like Jay Glazer's, and he usually is pretty accurate with these things. He's pretty in tune with the players. Reports like that don't help the Browns' cause.
No, and I sit and think, okay, where did it go wrong this year with the Browns and Beckham? And Jimmy pointed out there was a lot of it was the fact that he didn't take part in a lot of the off-season things. 1 day of OTA, 1 day of
and that really was just meetings and
hi, I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. A show up and say hi type of deal. So he really was never on the field.
Mandatory mini camp. Okay, he's here, kind of. And then, they go through training camp, and we didn't see him in the preseason. So, and then the Browns, it was like they spent half of the first half of the season trying to figure out every way in the book to get his hands on the football, and
to the detriment of the
rest of the offense. Yeah. And now you're sitting there going, man, with 3 games to go, he's going to have probably his worst season, injury-filled season, I should say, or whatever.
Injury-shortened
season. Yeah. He's going to have his worst as a pro.
Yeah, and that's another thing that hurts his value on the trade market. There's going to be somebody that will take a chance on Odell because he is such a unique talent and he can break a game open for an offense in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. But because of all those questions that are starting to add up, you're really in a tough spot. You tried so hard to acclimate him on the fly, essentially, because he didn't really practice in training camp either. Not much, anyway. He would go through individuals, and then he'd pretty much be shut down. I think there was maybe less than a handful of days where he actually did teamwork during training camp. So you knew something was up early in the season, and I really don't know. and I don't want to give too much credence to Baker's comments, but I really don't know why they didn't handle it differently.
Right.
Why they didn't just say, okay, we're going to shut you down for a few weeks, go get the surgery and we'll take you back.
Because it did the same thing with Kareem, because Kareem Hunt had
it was a little easier for that because they had an 8-game suspension.
Right. But it's like, he had the surgery and
he looks explosive.
And, Beckham obviously is laboring and not explosive.
Right. And Baker said yesterday about that is, look, we're taking him at less than 100%, but his less than 100 is still better than most people's, and it's good enough for us. You're risking an awful lot on your investment when you don't take care of your players like you should. And I don't know what the situation was. I don't know if the Browns thought he could play through it or what have you. I know a little bit about the history of the organization in terms of on the medical side, some major gaffes that have been made over the years, and I won't get into them here, but it's another pattern that repeats itself over and over and over again. They don't know how to manage egos, they don't know how to manage expectations, and they don't know how to handle serious situations with their players.
And now, we're sitting here. I mean, that press conference today is going to be
it's a circus.
It'll
be a 3-ring circus
again. I mean,
and to your point, going back to where did it go wrong, you've got to look back at early January and say this coaching search really was the tipping point to setting up what's
happened.
An unenjoyable season. I won't say miserable because they're winning games, but it's not been fun to watch this team play, to go to that stadium, to invest your time, to invest your money and your hope in this team, and you've really gotten very little in return.
Whereas, last year, even in a 7-8-1 season,
everybody had
a grand old time.
Yeah, it was fun going to the games late in that season. You felt like you were watching something special, and they were must-see TV, and they were going to be the team on the rise, and they were going to take that next step, and they finally got everything going in the right direction. They developed a running back. Once Todd Haley was dismissed, they figured out how to use Nick Chubb.
Yes.
They developed a quarterback who, for all intents and purposes, has been the biggest hope that we've had at that position since 2003.
Right.
And everything seemed to be trending upward, and then you add Odell in the offseason. Jarvis is locked into a long-term deal. Then Kareem Hunt comes on the scene, and we know that if he was able to get through his NFL disciplinary issues, he would be a game breaker for us. And he has been a pretty impactful player, but none of that has been enjoyable.
No.
None of this has been enjoyable to watch. It hasn't been as much fun as we thought. When they got Beckham Jr., it was like, man, you're looking at Beckham Jr., Landry, Callaway at the time, Higgins, and Njoku when he can catch the ball, Chubb, Hunt. You're just like, man, they're going to sling it all over the field. They're going to put up 40 points a game. It's going to be like watching Madden.
And you sat there and you said, well, in defense, we're going to have Garrett and Vernon are going to be chasing everybody across the field. We're going to have lockdown cornerbacks, and nobody's going to be able to score on the Browns. And, I sit there and go,
We got beat by a guy named Duck.
You got beat by a guy named Duck and a guy who had never taken an NFL snap in Brandon Allen. We're talking about, and it's funny. I was looking at Ben Axelrod just tweeted out. We've been, if you've been following us the last week or so on WKYC.com, we've been putting out a chance for you to vote on Twitter. Our Browns All-Decade team. One of the guys voted in at guard, Kevin Zeitler,
and he didn't. And a lot of the people that are getting voted in don't have very long bodies of work with this team, because that's where we're at with it. It's been that difficult over the years to retain and develop talent, and it looked like they were taking a step in the right direction. They added more talent. They added some really unique skill sets in playmakers with Beckham and Hunt, and yet they've been sputtering all year long. So to me, it does go back to that coaching hire. maybe we didn't get the right guy. I'm not sure that either one of the finalists would have been the right guy, because it reportedly came down to keeping Freddie Kitchens or hiring Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski. I don't know that he would have been any better to handle this situation.
Hard to say.
It's hard to say because Minnesota has been so inconsistent offensively, and he's had some troubles dealing with the ego of Kirk Cousins, which is the size of Texas, despite winning like maybe 2 important games in his career. I don't know that would have been the right route either, but they have to now consider, all right, are we going to stay with Freddie, or are we going to go in another direction and maybe bring in a veteran coach like Ron Rivera, like Mike McCarthy, who took the year off? You have to get somebody in here that can control personalities.
Right. This team needs discipline badly.
Freddie Kitchens said the Browns' character will be revealed on Sunday against the Bengals, but to me, this was another example of the Browns being just a bunch of characters.
Right. And it gets revealed not during the game, but before the game and after the game.
Yeah, that's the problem. I did a radio hit with my buddy up in Canada on my way into work today, and that's the thing we talked about mostly, is that those 3 hours where the game was being played, we're not talking about it.
Right.
Because it really didn't matter compared to what was coming out before and after the game.
Right. By the way, just to finish off the thought of the all-decade team, Baker Mayfield's your quarterback. Nick Chubb's your running back. So as you point out, guys that haven't been here long, but they're the ones that give you hope. You voted in Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry, and Andrew Hawkins as the receivers. Gary Barnidge at tight end, good pick. Joe Thomas and Mitchell Schwartz at the tackles. Joel Bitonio and Kevin Zeitler at guard. Alex Mack at center. I think our fans did pretty well. Right?
Yeah, that's a good lineup.
That's a good lineup, actually. I love the fact that both members of the Tomahawk podcast team made the all-decade team.
Well, to be honest, Hawkins was he was kind of an unsung hero when he was here in town. He was very undersized for the position, but he was always willing to address anything with the media, including some pretty important off-the-field topics, going back to when he wore the Tamir Rice T-shirt.
That's right.
During introductions. He always had a special connection with the fans, I think. He always got it.
Yeah.
He would do different charity events, different Shop with the Pro events. He was always front and center to help. So he was not only a good ball player on the field and a good example for guys who have gone on to have pretty good careers like Taylor Gabriel, he was also that guy that was going to embrace wherever he was at and make that home.
Yeah. Boy, wouldn't you love to have Andrew Hawkins or Taylor Gabriel, that kind of a player on, as another receiver for this team right now?
You would, and you'd love to have a guy that can be a galvanizing force in that locker room. People want to play with that guy. Look, everybody wanted to play with Baker earlier this season and throughout the offseason. We heard all these things about how guys really want to play for him, and they believe in him, and they believe in Freddie Kitchens. But the proof is in the pudding, and once again, the Browns come up short in that department.
Last thing, just thinking about wide receivers, one of the things that I really hope in this offseason or whatever we figure out was what happened with Rashard Higgins this year, and what happened between he and Freddie Kitchens or whatever. Because if you watched this team closely enough last year, you understood that he and Baker had something. And they even had it in the first game of the season against the Titans. And then you have the injury, and then he just
fell out of favor.
And it's just I sit there and go, we're talking about a guy that's your third or fourth wide receiver. It's not it's not life changing, but it's certainly again it's an example of something that was different this year, contrary to what we saw when the Browns were successful.
Rashard Higgins was the best safety blanket that Baker Mayfield had last year. And there have been several games this year where he looks like he could use that safety blanket again.
Indeed.
Yesterday, the first time I remember seeing Rashard Higgins on the field was on the hands team. Now, I'm not saying he didn't play offensive snaps, but that was the first time I had like consciously been aware that he was on the field. I saw a lot of Kadero Hodge. I saw
Ratley again.
Ratley. Saw a lot of different wide receivers out there. I did not remember seeing Rashard Higgins, and they have to make a decision on him because he was a restricted free agent going into this year, and now they have to figure out whether they're going to pay him, and he's going to require a decent sum. It won't be like anywhere near what the other wide receivers are making, but it's still money off the on the books. I don't like the Browns' chances to keep him after how this season has gone. I don't know that he wants to be a part of this organization anymore, and I'm not going to blame him for that because the way that his load has been managed this year has been baffling at best and maddening at times. Yeah. When you have a connection with a quarterback, that is gold for a wide receiver and the offense. And the Browns haven't found it.
Zero snaps yesterday.
I don't know what he has done to fall out of favor, but whatever it was something fierce.
Yeah. And you know, Freddie's not going to, he'll say it's between me and Rashard or, you know, whatever, and we won't get the answer now, but I'd sure like at some point to get an answer.
You know when we'll get it? When Rashard joins another team and they play the Browns. And then we'll find out about it.
Just another thing that it's part of this.
Sorry to be so down and depressing.
Well, but I know the Browns actually did win, but this has been a hallmark of this season. Even when the Browns win, it still feels like they lose.
Yeah, it really does. You had a lot of good things happen in the game yesterday. You had some bad things happen too, but nobody's talking about it. Again, with this team and this franchise, going back to '99, we're once again talking more about what happens around the team than what the team does on the field.
Yep. All right.
I agree, though. I would give Nick Chubb a game ball.
Yeah, it's 71% of you are on that same train of thought.
99 yards in the second half.
Yeah. It's not. Thank you. And
against the worst run defense.
Against the worst run defense. As Jimmy pointed out, that you lost a possession in the first half because of the Ward interception return for a touchdown. But one carry in a quarter or whatever.
3.5 for 7 yards.
And you can't have that.
And Kareem Hunt didn't have much bigger of a workload either.
Yeah.
They weren't targeting Odell and Jarvis. They had 9 combined targets in the first half. They had like 8 carries, of which I think 2 were from Baker, so 6 among the running backs in the first half. Who's getting the ball? If your star players can't get the ball, who are you playing that's getting the ball?
That's it. All right, that'll do it for us. My friend, as always, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dino.
All right, the Browns did win, but we've got a lot more on WKYC.com about the victory, thoughts on the Mayfield, Beckham, all that stuff, because there's just a lot of stuff. Bud Shaw has a column out, and we'll have a lot more today from Freddie Kitchens' press conference as well.
Oh, yeah, that'll be interesting for sure. No problem, no doubt.
What, 1:30 today?
1:30, the circus. We'll see you under the big top.
That's right. All right, for Brian Crane, for the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, and for Matt Florjancic, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thanks for watching. After further review.